Invite you to take your scriptures and turn back to Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 38 that we read a little bit ago. The Christian contemporary band Casting Crowns, led by its lead singer Mark Hall, wrote a song, I think back in 2005. It was titled, "Does Anybody Hear Her?" Ultimately, it is a message about seeing people deeply. It's about the absolute necessity of looking below the surface when seeing people in order to understand that their greatest need is Christ. Listen to the lyrics of the first verse. She is running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. She is trying, but the canyon's ever widening in the depths of her cold heart. So she sets out on another misadventure just to find she's another 2 years older and she's 3 more steps behind. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Or does anybody even know she's going down today? Under the shadow of our steeple, with all the lost and lonely people, searching for the hope that's tucked away in you and me. Does anybody hear her? Can anybody see? Did you feel those two questions when I read them? I did. I listened to the song numerous times before coming here today. Does anybody hear her? Notice can, not whether they have the, but can they? Would they be, can they see her? The second question to me helps us to consider this, that there are people who don't see others deeply. They don't have the skill, they're not using it, and it's costing people perhaps their eternity. What does it mean? What does it mean to look at someone but not see them deeply, to forego that skill and ability when we look at lost people? Listen to the bridge of the song. It says, if judgment looms under every steeple with lofty glances from lofty people who can't see past her scarlet letter and they've never even met her. I think Jesus had a scarlet love for people who had scarlet letters. You know why? Because he could see them. The ability to see people deeply is a repeated theme all throughout Matthew chapter 9. It's the context of our passage. In it, the verbs for seeing, like see, seeing, behold, even twice it talks about the eyes of the blind men that could not see and Jesus made to see. 16 different times it's used in this chapter leading up to our text. Chapter 9 and verse 2, when Jesus saw their faith, he didn't just see the physical dilemma of the paralytic man. He saw the people's faith that brought him. He could see below the surface, and he did. Chapter 9 and verse 8, when the crowd saw it, and Jesus passed by on from there, and he saw a man called Matthew. Couple that with chapter 9 and verse 11. But when the Pharisees saw that Jesus was with Matthew, Jesus and the Pharisees saw tax collectors, people with scarlet letters, people that were outcasts. He saw them differently than even religious leaders. Chapter 9, verses 2, 18, and 20. Behold, look at this, pay attention. Jesus says, I want to get your attention. Do you see people? He wants us to ask ourselves. Chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. When the little girl that was dead and all the people were playing the flutes, it said, Jesus saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion. He says, go away from this little girl because all she is doing is sleeping. And they laughed at him. But he could see something about her, even though she was dead. He knew what he was going to do. 2 blind men, they see because Jesus comes. Chapter 9 and verse 33, they look at the miracle that Jesus did in healing the blind and all that. And here's what they say. Never has it been seen in Israel like this. Even they have to admit that they have seen things with new eyes because they've been with Jesus. All of that leading up to the climax uses of the verbs in our text. And Jesus saw the crowds, and he was moved with compassion. You see, it's not a one-off event for Jesus. It wasn't just a day that he saw people this way and it made a difference. This was Jesus every day. This is how he lived his life. Matthew 9 is all about asking us the same haunting questions that Casting Crowns asks in the song, can anybody see? Can anybody even know that there are people perhaps in our church today, in your job, in your neighborhood, they're going down today, but do you even see them? If you read our text closely, you'll find that there is only two options that are available to us as believers in how we see people. We either see people from the inside out because we see deeply, or we see people from the outside in, and that is judgmentally. You either see people only on the surface, or you can see people like Jesus below the surface. And when you think about all of that, it makes John 4 and verse 35 stand out the more. Look, Jesus says, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see. It wasn't that the harvest wasn't in front of them. It wasn't that it wasn't plentiful, as Jesus says in that text. He says, but you are missing it because you cannot see. In a sense, Matthew 9 is a missional eye exam for all of us. A couple years ago, you probably do this. I went for a routine eye appointment. My vision's never been that really good at all, but I thought it was getting worse. I said, I probably need a new prescription. So I went in there, and he told me, yeah, it's getting different, but you've got a problem. He goes, a lot of people, maybe you have, what do they call the little things that flip through your eyes? Floaters, yes. He goes, you have floaters. You have more than normal. He goes, but I'll watch it. So 6 months later, it got worse. And he took a picture of my eye, and he says, your floaters aren't one here and there floating through like everybody else. All your floaties have made a team. And they've got together, and they all float together in one patch. So I went again lately, and he says, it's even bigger. You got floaties, it takes up the whole side of that. And when they cross your eye, the middle of it, so if you see me in services, and maybe you've noticed I missed a couple of words and I read the prayer, because sometimes it looks good, and then a minute later, it's all blurry. So but you know what? I thought about that, and I say, isn't that God's people sometimes? I mean, we look at it, people, and sometimes it's clear, but let me tell you this, sometimes we don't see people because it's getting blurrier. We don't see because we have floaties and things in our lives that distract us and keep us from seeing people like Jesus saw people. And my contention this morning is you need to see people like Jesus because you need to reach people like Jesus. We will not reach people if we do not see them. Jesus saw people differently because he saw people deeply. We could rightly say for him that he saw invisible people that no one else could see. Whether you like the Chosen series or not on TV isn't my point by this illustration, but if you watch this one scene, you will be benefited. It's in the very first episode. It's Jesus confronting Mary Magdalene. The scene is basically she's in what we would call today a bar, and probably there because, as you could watch the scene for yourself, she has demons. She's very depressed, and she doesn't know where to turn. And so she goes there to get alcohol. The bartender is a guy who must like her to something because he's checking up on her. They have a talk together, and he doesn't want to give her the drink, but she needs it to distract herself from all the problems that she faces. No one else can see that. As she goes to grab the cup of alcohol, Jesus puts her hand, out of the blue, he puts his hand on top of hers and looks at her and said, that's not for you. She looks at him and says, don't touch me. She gets up and walks away and says, stop bothering me. But he doesn't. As she walks out to leave, he follows her. She looks around and she says, leave me alone. And then he says this, and it stops her in her tracks. Mary of Magdala. And she just stops. In fact, she drops her glass of alcohol and it shatters on the ground. She stops and she turns around trembling. who are you and how do you know my name? She hasn't gone by Mary Magdalene for years, since she was a child when her dad loved her. And everybody knows that because previously they show what her dad was like and how he loved her and cared for her. But she hasn't been that person for a long time, and she's far from it at this point. And then he starts quoting this to answer her question, how do you know my name? He says, Isaiah 43:1, but now he who created you, he who formed you, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. That's the verses her dad told her all the time. Oh, he saw her deeply. He saw her name. He saw her story. And then he touched her and healed her of her demons. He changed her life. Oh, see, that's who he is. That's who we are to be like. Jesus saw Mary deeper. He saw past her drinking. He saw past her depression. He saw past her demons. He saw past all of it because he saw her greatest need was him. And that's why he came there that day. And what I want to do this morning in our text is unpack the passage and ask ourselves the question, how can we learn to see people deeply? I think there are three this morning from our text that you need to have in order to do that as a lifestyle like Jesus did. The first one, to see people like Jesus did, you need contact. In other words, you need to be where people are. If you read the Gospels, even in a cursory reading of it, you have to know that Jesus was always on the move, going to where people were. And so it's not surprising that the text says the first three words, and Jesus went. It's an action verb. You know how he was able to see people this way? Because every day for Jesus was a day that he was on mission. It was his life. He didn't take vacations from the mission. He didn't forget about the mission. Every day he was on it. Matthew repeats it. He was sent, the Father who sent me, 10:40. I was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. Chapter 15 and verse 24. The parable of the sent son, who was the last one to come to the people that were taking advantage of the master, and they killed him. Over and over, Jesus says, this is who I am. I'm sent here. And every day he lived it out because he was on mission. I don't think it's far-fetched to say Jesus saw people different horizontally because his Father had sent him vertically. And the relationship with God and being on mission is what made him look at people differently because he was always on mission. You see, seeing and sending are connected. Jesus went because he was sent. He felt the power of it, of his commission every day. Seeing people deeply, can you look at the text? Always involves going places. Going places. That's how you know that you are sent and living it every day. You go places. It says in our text, he went to cities, he went to villages, he went to synagogues. He went to big places, he went to little places, he went to religious places. But what's common about all the places he went to is that there were people there, people who needed him, needed to hear his message, because places and people are connected. So let me ask you, where has being on mission taken you? What places have you gone to? I'm so thankful for my life that for me, on mission, I've been to the Philippines and England and Ecuador and Colombia and Haiti and Panama, Trenton, Hamilton, Indian reservations. Why? Because a long time ago, someone told me how to live sent. And it's changed my life. And I've gone to all these other places, not for vacations, but for ministry. Why? Because Jesus went. Because sending and seeing go together. I would go so far this morning to say, no sent, no went. And if you have not gone to places and you are not talking to people and you do not see them differently, it's because you're not on mission every day. You don't feel the weight of being sent like Jesus was sent, because sent and went also go together. And he did these places. Why? He didn't go to a synagogue, our text says. He didn't go to the synagogue. He went to their synagogue. He went to where they were. He didn't wait till people come up to him like we do and say, ask us about our faith. That's not living on mission with Jesus. He went to where they were because you have to connect with people. So let me say to you, ask you, have you went to your neighbors yet? Do you have a went? Have you went across the street? I'm not talking across the ocean. Have you went across the street? Not just global places, but local places. Have you went down the hall or to the cubicle next to you at work? Have you went to your friends and your relatives, family members that don't know Christ? Have you went to them yet? If not, it's because you're not feeling the weight and the responsibility of being sent. But let me go a little further. Let me push a little harder. What did he do when he went to those places he was sent to? Well, he did two things. And mind you, you must keep them together like he did. Our text says this. Here's what he did. He taught them in the synagogues, proclaimed the gospel and healing of every disease and every affliction. You know what he did? He taught people and he touched people. He taught them and he touched them. And we need both. He saw people holistically. He didn't just say, hey, you're a soul on a stick and I'm going to give you the gospel and that's all I care about. No, he cared about them holistically. If he saw someone needy, someone that needed help, he would help them. He fed 5,000 people. He healed every sickness and every disease. He didn't just care about people's souls. He cared about their body and they knew it. Because that is the kingdom. In this chapter, in chapter 9, people touch him and he touches people. Why? Because he wasn't at a distance. He wasn't trying to go through a rote program and say, here's my apologetic propositions. Here's the truth. Live with it. No, truth and touching. Both he gave people because that's the kingdom of God. It's meeting people's physical needs and spiritual needs. And that's why we have a deacons fund. Inside and often outside of our ministry because we have to reach people where they are. Notice the comprehensive terms. He went through all the cities and villages. He healed every sickness, every disease. He didn't just pick certain people. He didn't say, well, you're a good candidate, or you're a nice person, or you look like me, or you hold my beliefs, or you're like me in so many ways. No, everyone, every disease. If you came to him, he helped you. He wasn't partial. He didn't say just this. I only help people that are the same race I am, hold the same political views that I have. That's never Jesus. That's not the kingdom. No, it was everyone. So can I tell you, here's a missions principle for you. No contact, no impact. If you don't contact people, if you're not with people, if you're not going where they are, if you don't see them because you're sent, you will not have any impact. And to do that, can I say, it has to be purposeful. Mark 1:38 says, Jesus, let us go to the next towns that I may preach there also, for that is why I came. Oh, it was planned. It was intentional. I love it when God puts people in my lap and I sat next to the Hindu guy on the plane. I didn't orchestrate that. God put that in my lap. But can I tell you, that's not what I depend on to witness to people. We have to do it purposely, intentionally. Jesus says, I do this and I go here and I go to these. You know why? Because I'm on a mission. William Carey had a map, the great missionary, pioneer missionary. In the 1780s, he had a map in his office of India and all the places that he wanted to go and the people he wanted to reach. You know why? Because William Carey was intentional. He did it on purpose. He planned it. Today we would say he put it on his iPhone or his calendar. That's how serious he was. Where are the maps in your house? More importantly, where are the maps in your heart? William Carey had it and he changed India for centuries. If we're going to change Hamilton and Trenton, we have to have Jesus' maps in our hearts. So you need to see people like Jesus sees people because you have to reach them. In order to do that, we need three traits. The first one is you have to have contact, without a doubt. The second one is you need to have compassion. Look at verse 36. When he saw the crowds, because he was sent And he was going around reaching people, and he saw the crowds. He looked at, but what did he see when he saw them? Irritable people, bothersome people? No. People who needed compassion and healing. That's what he saw. So he went throughout all the visit, and he planned and purposed it, and he said when he saw the crowds, he saw them, and the two words are this: harassed and helpless. How you look at people will determine how you love people. David Brooks wrote a book, and the title is How to Know a Person. The subtitle is even better: The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. He has a chapter in the book that I read. It says, the chapter is called I See You. He says there are basically two kinds of people in every crowd. There are diminishers and illuminators. Diminishers are people who make others feel small and unseen. They stereotype people. They ignore other people. They are so involved, and I quote, he says, they're so involved with themselves that other people, listen, are just not on their radar. They size up people. You know what that means, right? You check out what they look like, and immediately, based on just their look, as the song said, I said before, we've never even met them, but we look at them, and we start making judgments. Look at that. You remember that commercial that wasn't too long ago? I think it was a Geico one, where they're all, you can't, you're growing up to be like your parents. Remember that one? And these people are standing there, and someone in the grocery store walks by, and they have really bright blue hair. Remember that? He goes, we all see it. We all see it. Because the idea, you look at that person with that bright blue hair, and you're already thinking things. Like, what in the world are they doing? They must also mean this, and that must be true also in their lives. David Brooks calls it stacking. He says stacking is the practice of learning one thing about a person and then making a whole nother series of assumptions about what they're really like. So you see someone who has a sleeve of tattoos, and you look at that and you go, oh yeah, they must be this, they must be that. They have all this piercings on their face. Otherwise, oh yeah, I know that type, and as if we really do. We've never met them, of course, but we know their life story, although we're crazy because we're wrong. Oh, see, that's what he's saying. Sizing up, stacking up people. Jesus saw past the crowd's hair color. He saw past that, and he saw them as people that were harassed, helpless. He saw them as shepherdless sheep, but that they really needed was a shepherd, namely Jesus, to come into their life and tell them really what their greatest need was. Harass is the word skulo in the Greek. You know what it means? Literally to flay or take the skin off of something. It came to mean in modern or normal discourse someone who was harassed. They were worried because people were troubling them. They were bewildered because someone who should be teaching them and touching them in the right ways, they weren't. They were left to themselves. Sheep without a shepherd is an eschatological term from Ezekiel 34, and it pictured the day when the religious leaders were so awful they were fleecing the sheep, skinning them as they were, and then there would be the good shepherd who would come, and he would take care of his sheep. And Jesus is the fulfillment of Ezekiel 34. He is the shepherd that everyone's been waiting for. They were harassed. People were taking advantage of them, and they were helpless. The word means literally to cast down to the ground. It's the idea that you are drunk and you fall down, or you are wounded so bad by someone beating you up that you can't even get up, i.e. picture the Good Samaritan story where he was left half dead on the road and couldn't even get up. He says this is how he saw people. He didn't just see what their skin had on it or their piercings or how they looked or how they talked or the car they were. He saw them as inside. These people are harassed. No one's telling them the good news. No one's sharing with them. They have been beat up and left to die. Are lost people on your radar? Or do you see people and size them up a little bit? And then you stack them up and I bet they do this too, and I bet that's true. I mean, you see Why do we talk that way? Why do we look at people that way? You know why? David Brooks says, because you're so involved in yourself. You don't have time to see people as they really are. That truth was really, I like to read memoirs of people's lives. Vivian Garnack wrote a memoir in 1987, and she titled it Fierce Attachments. And the reason she titled it that way is because she remembers back when her dad died when she was 13. He died of a heart attack, and her mom, whose name was Bess at the time, was 46. They had a great marriage. They loved each other. It was everything to her mom. And when her husband died, she says her words, it undid her. In fact, she was so distraught from her husband dying that when they were burying him, she tried to jump into the grave and they had to hold her back. She said, but over time, her mother's great loss and grief became all-encompassing to her. Basically, no one and nothing else mattered. Gornack writes this, I just became a prop in my mother's drama. And then she wrote this, my mother saw me, but never really saw me. She said this, she doesn't even know I'm here. Is that you? Are you so involved in your drama that you see people, but you never really see people? Let me ask you, would anyone say that about you? What about your kids? What about your spouse? What about the people that you know at work? What about your family members that are lost or your neighbors? Would they say, oh, she or he, they don't even know I'm here. They don't even know that I'm on the block, the same block. They don't even know me and I live next door to them. They don't know me. Oh, you see, that wasn't true of Jesus. And the reason is he had compassion. It's a Greek word that means your bowels, and that's where they thought because if your bowels are mixed up, it's because you're emotionally upset. So if you really love someone, it's going to get to you from the inside out 3 times, not our text only, but Matthew 14:14 and 15:32. I had compassion on them. I had compassion on the crowds. You see, Jesus was not too involved in his own drama. By the way, his drama was the most important drama in the world. It was a drama that would take him to the cross to die for sinners like you and me. And he still wasn't too involved in his drama. In fact, he made other people's problems his drama. That's the difference between him and us. He didn't just see people as sinners. He saw them as someone who needed a shepherd. He didn't just see people as lost. He saw why they were lost, because they were helpless and harassed. I think of Jonah, don't you? Jonah saw the Ninevites, but he never really saw them. He saw them already judgmental, that they are so bad people. When I look at them, I can't even look at them because they're horrible people because of all they've done. And they truly were, but he never really saw them. And you know how? Listen to this. He had pity on the plant. That was his drama, his life, hot. See, he was so involved in his hot and how hard it was and all the things God wasn't doing for him. In his drama, he had pity on the plant, but he didn't have pity on hundreds of thousands of people in Nineveh. He didn't care that they went to judgment. Someone has said love is blind, but I really think true love is sight. Because when you can really see as Jesus sees, then your pity will be properly placed. So what do you need to be like Jesus so you can reach people? How do you see like he does? Well, you need 3 traits. The first one is contact. The second one's compassion. And the last one is Christ-likeness. Christ-likeness. In our text, please watch. The things that Jesus did on mission in our verses, when you start chapter 10, it's the same thing he sends his disciples out to do. In chapter 9 and verse 35, it says, Jesus healed every disease and every affliction. The exact same phrase is repeated in 10 and verse 1 because the disciples are sent out and they heal every disease and every affliction. Do you get the point? They're like Jesus. Jesus sees people as lost sheep, 9:36. The disciples see people as lost sheep, chapter 10 and verse 6. Jesus cast out demons numerous times in our chapter 9. Chapter 10, verses 1 and 8, the disciples cast out demons. Jesus proclaims the kingdom, 9:35. The disciples proclaim the kingdom, 10:7. Do you get the idea? What is Matthew doing? He wants you to know that if you know Jesus, you do what he did. You say what he says. The places he goes, you go. And the bottom line for all of us, is what we need and don't have enough of, and why we don't witness, and why we're not bold, and why it's a struggle, is because we lack Christ-likeness. Interestingly, in this text, the word cast out, the Greek word ekbalo, means to throw out or cast out. It's used of demons, and that's 98% of all of its use in the Gospels. In our text, at the beginning, cast out demons. Right before our text, right after our text, cast out demons. But that word, the same word, casting out demons, is the same word in our text in verse 37. Can you read it? Verse 38. He said to his disciples, the harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out. It's the same word as casting out demons. I don't know if there's any other time it's used in that way in the Gospels. In other words, Jesus says this: I came to cast out demons, and I came to cast out disciples. See, if there's no casting out disciples into the harvest, there's no casting out of demons in people. You see how connected they are? There are people in darkness out there. And if you're not cast out by Jesus, if you're not going out there, the darkness will stay. Demonized people need discipled people. That's the bottom line. And if you were at the Permeate conference last weekend, you'll know this, that evangelism and discipleship go together. We're not out just to get people saved so they get out of heaven, free pass card, all that. No, we're here to tell you, you need to become like Jesus, because the hope of the world is people who are Christians who really live it and act like it, becoming more like Christ. Brandon Heath has a song, Give Me Your Eyes. The lyrics are, give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything I've been missing. Give me your love for humanity. Do you see how he puts it together? Give me your eyes is equal to give me your love. It's the bottom line. What we see is a demonstration of what we love. And when we see people deeply, we will see them and we will love them. And in our text, what about being Christ-like? What is it about it? Well, it says this: we need his eyes so we can see. We need his heart for compassion. We need his hands so we can touch other people. And we need his mouth to proclaim his key. You see all the things about Jesus? We need all of them in our lives if we're going to live the way he did. Anayan Nin is her name. And she made this astute statement: we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. You know what that means? We're all guilty of thinking that what we see and how we look at things is the only way. You know what we need to say? We need to see things as he is. That's what we need. That's what Jesus is asking for. Luke 7, and I'll close, tells the story of a woman that was a street woman, came off the street into a big party with religious leaders that Jesus was having at a dinner. She knelt down and washed his feet with her hair. She let her hair down, which was unbelievably a bad taboo, immoral almost considered. And Jesus says, as Simon complains under his breath about Jesus seeing this woman and still letting all that happen, and the first question he asks Simon is, do you see this woman? And the answer is, oh, he saw her, but he never really saw her. Jesus offered forgiveness. The Pharisee offers condemnation. And the Bible will not let you think that you're somewhere in between. It's one or the other. Do you see her? Let's pray. Oh, Father, I remember the old hymn, "Open our eyes that I might see." Oh, God, you walked down the road with the two on the Emmaus road. They couldn't see who you were. But you used the word of God to open their eyes, and it changed everything, because seeing you must precede seeing others. Oh, God, would you do the same today by our Holy Spirit? Open the eyes of all of God's people that we might see how you see. In Jesus' name, amen.